Hey everyone, welcome to Cast Dice first ever review video. Now this is pretty exciting for me. This is something that back in the olden days when we had boltaction.net, which later became the Bolt Action Alliance, even before then when it was just the LRDG and WWPD, we would write a series of articles reviewing products that came out for Bolt Action and Bolt Action related products. But it was always that weird situation where you'd take pictures, you'd write an article, but you weren't able to actually pick up a thing. You weren't able to reach onto your shelf and pick up a model and say, check it out. Look at what I've got. Now, I am a little skeptical of some unboxing videos, and I don't think I'm probably going to be doing a lot of those. But I do think that there are some businesses, some products, some services that would be good to show people because, for example, today we're going to be talking about our good friend Andy Singleton's Volley Fire Painting Service. And it's one thing to talk about the models that people paint for you. It's also another thing to take still photographs using a light box and to post those online. But that doesn't actually give you the best view of what these things could look like. And having, way back when in my competitive Warhammer days, ordered a lot of pre-painted armies or having sent armies off to commission paint from places around the world, I know that sometimes what you'd see online and then what would show up at your house were wildly different. So today I thought it would be a good idea to show the new army that arrived in the mail this week. Now, friends of the show or longtime listeners will know that Andy Singleton is a friend of the show. He has been on Cast Dice. He was on the LRDG too. And he's just been sort of one of the crew, even though he's in the UK and I'm in Australia. He's a friend. Now, that might have some of you thinking, oh, you're just reviewing a friend's product or projects. You might be biased. Well, to be fair, I probably am. However, I have had quite a few armies commission painted in my day, up to 20, 25. And I thought it would be important to talk about Andy. Now, if you are a longtime listener of Cast Dice, you will know that yes, I typically talk about things in a positive manner. I do that mainly for two reasons. One, there's enough negativity on the internet. We don't really need to harp on the things that aren't great. But more importantly, two, if I talk about something on either this the new YouTube channel or on a podcast, it's something that I'm a fan of. My grandmother had a famous expression. She's 105, big in the local community in her small town in Iowa. And her big expression was, well, first we work, then we play. That's what little froggies say, but that isn't really what we're talking about. The other one was, if you don't have anything nice to say, just don't say it. So I don't. I typically try to avoid criticizing things online. So in that vein, because I'm talking about Andy today, and the products or the models he painted for me, which in this case is a brand new Star Wars Legion Imperial army, I like it. Because if I didn't, you wouldn't see it. Now, that said, let's talk about Andy himself. Andy Singleton is a one-man painting machine. He has painted several armies for me over the years, and I'm such a happy customer with the stuff that he's done for me that I said, I need a new Imperial army for Star Wars Legion. Could you paint this for me? We negotiated what models he would paint. We negotiated a price. I packed up and assembled the models, and I sent it to him. Now, I know some people have Andy assemble it. I know that some people have Andy base their models. In this particular case, I chose, what traditionally would be a snowtrooper army, but in this case, Galactic Marines. For you Star Wars fans, you'll get that. Now, you'll notice the bases are blank. I do give examples of some of the wonderful basing that Andy does. I did want to match paint these to an existing Imperial army that I've painted since sending this one off. So that's why the bases are black. I do recommend Andy's basing. In fact, I recommend it a lot. Now, Andy's a very busy guy. He actually paints models for big gaming companies. I know he's done things for Warlord, Knight Models, and a variety of other companies. So if you are interested in having Andy paint your stuff, please give him plenty of lead time. He's a very busy man. Now, I do talk about it later in the video, but it is important to mention that there are multiple tiers of Andy's painting. You can get very basic tabletop, of which you have the soldier I just held up, and which I will show later in more detail. You know, basic tabletop. So that is what I paid for the majority of this army. Just basic tabletop, standard, because I knew that Andy would, you know, Andy's basic tabletop isn't just base coat and wash. In fact, it's not. He has very subtle color palettes, and he works his way through and highlights all the colors. Everything on the models that I got was highlighted in one way or another in really clever and subtle ways that really make it look nice on the tabletop. But then for the character models, I took the next tier up and I said, please, can I get your better quality? Now, there is actually a quality above that you can pay extra for, which is the stuff, I believe the quality when he paints for major game companies for their, you know, display models for websites or for event models. So there are multiple tiers there. He does paint vehicles. In fact, he does vehicles beautifully. I just happen to love vehicles, so I wanted to paint them. I wanted to paint my own. So I had Andy do the thing that I'm not so fast at, which in this case is the infantry. Now, we will get into all of that in just a second. Now, if you are interested in contacting Andy, as I say, please talk to him in advance. That is probably the best way to do it. If you go to his Facebook page, if you look for Volley Fire Painting Service, and you type that in, if you message it, you will only get Andy, and he responds pretty quickly. Keep in mind, he is a very busy man. He does paint a lot of models, so it is always a good idea to contact him in advance, especially if you are thinking you want to have something done for a particular event. Hey everyone, and now we are back and we're going to take a look at some of the models that Andy has painted for me. Now, there are multiple tiers, so to speak, of painting detail level that he paints for models. Now, if you look at this is an example of his tabletop gaming standard. It's a basic painting level. It's, affordable. It is a reasonable price per model, and it really does show what he's willing to do for, a good price. Now, this is one of the most complained about models in the Imperial forces for Star Wars Legion. This is, of course, the General Officer model, and she is looks actually pretty damn spectacular. I never minded this model. I quite like it. But when Andy's painted it with just the subtle details on her skin and her uniform, man, I think she really pops. And that is one of the things I really like about Andy as a commissioned painter. Here is the communications officer. He really is able to, using a very subtle palette of colors, is able to really make models stand out on the tabletop. Now, some of these models, all of which are the ones I'm showing are the gaming tabletop standard, are as you can see, some of them look glossy. That is due to the lights that I'm using to record today. These on the tabletop do have a slight shine, and that works, for example, for the Imperial Guard really well, but their robes wouldn't normally be this shiny. Now, I am very impressed. I have used several painting services in my time as a gamer, but never have I seen on a basic tabletop level such a nice, subtle gradation of color. I mean, the palettes, it isn't extreme highlighting that reaches off the table and punches you, but you do have at least 3 gradations of color on all of these models, and it really does make them pop on the tabletop. Now, one of the colors that people love to talk about being very difficult to paint besides yellow is white. And I think Andy, especially for just quote unquote tabletop playing, tabletop level of painting, man, these just look great. I mean, you absolutely have gradations. I mean, you can tell that the boots are fabric and what's armor plating. You can see all the detailing. Now, what you can't really tell is on the cloth, it's actually a very subtle gray with highlights. And unfortunately, again, as the lighting for this video sort of makes it look just one color. But you'll have to trust me, on the tabletop, there are multiple grays there. And again, because Andy's using a nice subtle palette, yeah, you don't necessarily see it in this extreme light, but on the tabletop, it absolutely shows. Now, here's another model using his white method. Man, I love painting white. It is one of my favorite colors to paint models. I love the contrast, but it takes a lot of effort and a lot of layers for me to get a decent layering of white. Just looking at Andy's, though, I mean, it's, again, super subtle, but all the detail is there. Nothing's washed out, which is often a real problem when you get looking particularly at armor plating. Yeah, again, I could not be happier with these. Again, the fabric on these is gray with another layer, at least one extra highlight layer. I think there's two, and the rifle itself is highlighted as well. It's a almost black metallic with a slight highlight. Again, can't tell in this color. Sorry with these lights. But yeah, fantastic stuff. Now, if we look at a model that is entirely that subtle gray, I'm hoping some of it will show more clearly now that there aren't lots of contrasting colors on the model. This is one of my favorite models that Andy painted in this batch. Again, it's just super subtle, but he really does capture that dark, grim, shiny on edges look for an Imperial droid. Yeah, I could not be happier, as I said. Now, a model that is also wonderfully fantastic in person, but just doesn't show up in this light, and I've been playing with the settings on my camera to get this to show through. You'll have to trust me. It looks fantastic. Again, just all of that. There's multiple layers on the metal with some very nice extreme highlights. The grays and the blacks are highlighted in such a way that it almost has that wet glossy look. But it does have nice layering that you can see on the table. Again, for a general tabletop level of painting, that's just awesome. Now, you'll notice, of course, all of the Galactic Marines that I have in the background that Andy painted for me. I didn't want just another snowtrooper army when I sent this off for him to paint them. Now, the white is a little hard to tell, but again, there are multiple layers there. In fact, if you look carefully, the boot has almost a gray undercoat with white highlighting on top, and the belt and webbing is a bone color. And again, it doesn't really show particularly well in this lighting, but it is very nicely and subtly highlighted. The gray fabrics as well, you can really see that there. Now, I really do like that, again, just like the Royal Guard that we saw earlier, there is some very nice highlighting on the red fabric, and the red armor likewise has some great highlighting, but you really get a differentiation between the armor and the fabric, which could easily blend together because you have the sort of the glossy look of armor plating that you see on that sergeant's armor. Here's another example. You can see again just the wonderful layers of red. Again, we have the bone highlighting on the belt and on the webbing, and the gray base on the boots and on, yeah. the other fabrics. Really a big fan of this. And the goggles, very cool. There's at least 3 layers of green on there. And again, this is just his tabletop level. Could not be more impressed. These look absolutely fantastic in person. Now, I'm going to get into a few unofficial models. Everything I've shown so far has been an FFG official model. Way back when I sent this off to Andy, the Death Troopers were not officially out. So I got these from a Shapeways store. This is Mel's Miniatures. There's very subtle but very nice dark and light gray highlights on these that really makes them look, glossy and yet detailed at the same time. I want to show this model next to the official FFG Death Trooper, just so you can get a feel. Of course, my Death Trooper is just black primed, and I did that on purpose. I wanted you to see just how subtle Andy's priming looks. It's not just a black model. It really does show up. Now, if you look at my black model, now it's a little hard to tell with the background, but it is, if we put them side by side, significantly chunkier than Mel's models from Shapeways. Now, Mel's stuff has been traditionally thinner than the official FFG models. If we look at, here's another Death Trooper from that same squad. They are slighter, they're shorter, they're a lot more slender. That said, the detail is very nice. And before the official Death Troopers came out, this was a very nice alternative. And here we go. Here is the special weapon trooper from that squad. Now, as I said, for 3D prints, these are very nice. Now, with Mel's, you do get the option sometimes to have different levels of detailing. These are not the super finest details. These are the second layer up. But trying to show. Now you can see that there is some texturing from the 3D printing on his chest plate. You can see it right there. That said, I think if you go to the highest detail, that would disappear. Very nice, though. And one last Death Trooper from that squad. There are more, but I figured you would want to see other things. Again, Andy's done a wonderful job, especially, around the knees, the helmet, the shoulder pads, just to give those little extreme highlights that really does make this model, while still looking black, not black, A, but also B, very nicely detailed. So hats off to Andy. I actually was planning to paint these for a long time. They were the only model that I sent him that were actually primed, because I primed them getting ready to play with them. And I literally just couldn't get myself to paint them. They were just, I didn't know where to start. I didn't know how to do it. But now that I've seen sort of Andy's in the flesh, I think this has given me some very good, and there's the dog grumbling in the background, some very good ideas on how I can do mine. So yeah, fantastic. Now another Mel model that I have is, again, a model that was not out at the time, that is out now, and this is Bosk. Now, Andy did an exceptional job with this model, and this is an example of a model at the next tier up, painting-wise. Yeah, you can really see he's put extra detailing. There's extra levels of highlights. Of course, the eyes are painted, and yeah, just a fantastic model. I think this is also a Mel's Miniatures model. If you compare him to the FFG Bosk, he is way thinner. It's a significantly different model than the FFG one, but it does look nice on the tabletop, especially with Andy's painting, and I think it'll do a wonderful job of setting this force apart in yet another way on the tabletop from everyone else's Imperial forces. Now, while we are getting into models with that second sort of layer of, or second tier of Andy's painting, let's take a look at Veers. This is an absolutely astonishingly detailed model. Of course, this is the official FFG model, and Andy really has gone above and beyond with this model. What maybe you can't tell is if you compare Veers to the generic officer has some very nice subtle highlights, whereas Veers has just that extra layer of detail. His uniform, it's astonishing in person. There you go, another view. And while we are talking about that next tier of detail and official FFG models, let's talk about the big man himself, the Emperor Palpatine. Andy really has really shown here. There's at least 4, possibly 5 very subtle highlights of gray throughout his robes alone, which makes him look astonishing on the tabletop. Unfortunately, this model and Andy's paint job does suffer a little bit under the lighting that I'm currently recording in, but if I turned off the extreme lights and just had a normal overhead light or daylight, he really does almost glow, which, given that this is a model that's almost entirely just black, is saying something. I especially like, if you look at his hand, there is just wonderful detailing on his pallid skin. Andy really just has done an astonishing job with old Palpatine to make him, stand out. He looks very nice in particular. I mean, just like you'd expect next to his Royal Guard. Just does stand out on the tabletop in normal lighting, which is great. And sort of the best of the lot. Not that anything else has been anything but fantastic, but oh my God, I do have to give Andy massive props. His Boba Fett is phenomenal. I have to especially give him props, because if you look in the Cast Ice logo right there in the corner, you will see it is loosely based on Boba Fett's helmet. And knowing that, Andy put a little extra love into this model. I believe it is just the next tier of detail. It's just what you would call the second level of detail, is highly detailed models. But my God, it is fantastic. And it really does show the difference. I mean, if we look at Andy's tabletop standard, it's great. If we look at Andy's next level, it's fantastic. And if we look at sort of the tier above, which is, I kind of think maybe what his Fett is here, it's mind-blowing. It's astonishing, the level of highlighting, subtle weathering, damage. Mate, I couldn't be happier with how this particular model looks. I cannot wait to put him on the tabletop, which, it's going to be cool. It's going to be very cool. Now, one of the things that I'm sure you've noticed by now is with these models, I did not have Andy do the bases. I had him just leave them black. Now, you might say, why would you do that? Well, normally, Andy does a very nice job of basing models, which we will see once I start showing you some of his World War II stuff. Very, very detailed. Lots of, different textures, different colors, different materials. This is a Battle of the Bulge German model. Again, fantastic stuff. But I wanted these guys to match the base of my existing Imperial army so that I could interchange models in and out if I wanted to. I'm not sure I'm going to, now that I actually see the models in person. They look completely different from the rest of my Mim Bim Stormtrooper army. That said, it would be nice to be able to occasionally pull a character if I need. And it does give me the opportunity to use that Boba Fett in, either of my Imperial armies. Now, if we look at this, again, this is Andy's painting of a German Panzerfaust soldier from Battle of the Bulge. This is a Warlord Games model. Again, this is tabletop standard for him. It's very nicely done. I mean, how many companies do you know will put camouflage into their base standard services. Super good. Now, I really like how Andy, again, is using this is a Warlord model, is using a very subtle palette of colors, but the highlights are there. They are clear. And I have played with this German army several times in local events, and people have tried to get me to put it up for the painting awards. Of course, every time said no because it just, I didn't paint it. But, God, it deserves to be there. The highlights are, again, all in the right places. There's just a really organic look, and yet the highlighting is there too. I especially like what he's done with the uniforms. I mean, I know Andy has painted about 10 million German models in his time, so I'm sure painting these was not anything new or wild for him. But, God, it looks good. I know he has his method down. He's perfect for World War II models, but, I think you can see from the Star Wars stuff that he can definitely stretch his wings and do other things too. His comic book DC stuff that you can see on his website is absolutely wonderful as well. Now, here's something slightly different. This is an American, also Battle of the Bulge. But again, you can see those really nice highlights, realistic colors for the models. Whereas Star Wars is definitely science fiction-y. Here we are going with a far more organic color palette. But again, wonderful highlights. Just looks great. And the fact that the bases sort of frame the models, but they also sort of don't blend into them, which can be a problem with World War II bases. Just you get the feeling that these guys really are fighting in the Ardennes. I mean, if we look carefully, I'm not sure if that will show. Yeah, I suppose it is a little bit. There's all sorts of foliage on the bases, different textures. There's rock, there's grasses, there's actually logs, rocks of different sizes, and little pieces of wood. And then on top of that, once that's all been painted, we have snow and mud. It's just great. And he does that throughout all the models he painted for this force. Now, I wanted to show you this. I showed you the camouflage. Well, this is an MG42 team that has had some, just general white smocks. Now, it's very easy. You've seen Andy do his whites on those scout troopers. I really like how this looks more realistic for the bolt action force. You really do get a feel. Again, that basing, wow. You do get a feel of almost a dirty white smock in the battlefield off of these guys. Helmet covers and jumpers. I mean, how good does that look? Just astonishing. And there you have it. That is a pretty darn good example, I think, of Andy's work. I mean, there I've shown you models from not only the entire Star Wars Legion project he just painted for me, I also showed you the Battle of the Bulge models and the assorted American Battle of the Bulge models. So I got both German and American models to show you guys. I think it shows that Andy's a very talented painter, and, well, I'm just simply a fan. Now, I did say in the course of that video that there was the Boba Fett model that I think he put a little extra detail on top of sort of his second tier of painting. I think that is because he was being very cool, and he was, it is the podcast logo. Thank you, Andy. Now you might say, oh, but did he put extra detail on all the models? No, that is exactly the quality you can get if you contact him and say, I would like a tabletop standard army. This is what I would like. Or if you would like the next tier up, you could do that too. Man, that second tier is so good. I mean, his base level is fantastic. So many times in the past when I've contacted people about painting an army for me, and just gone for basic tabletop, it has been, base coat, maybe a wash, usually heavy-handed, and just isn't particularly great. With Andy's, I really love how he's got highlighting, how the model, even though it's just quote-unquote tabletop, pops on the tabletop. And as I said, that army that he painted, the Battle of the Bulge army he painted, could have been qualified and probably would have won a Best Painted in a bolt action event, at least one, possibly more that I've entered it in. But of course, since I didn't paint it, I wasn't going to put my hand up for a painting award for it. That's a little unethical. Now, well, it's all well and good that I'm a massive fan of Andy's stuff, but do I recommend him for other people? Absolutely. I'm a very slow and methodical painter. When I paint, I tend to use tons of highlights, and it just takes a lot of extra time and effort for me to get models to pop on the tabletop, which is what I like to do. It's one of the reasons why I am so damn slow as a painter. What I love about Andy is he's able to get the same pop with far fewer colors in a far more limited palette. It really does show that how much better of a painter he is than I am, and I've been painting a very long time. I highly recommend Andy. If you are time poor, if you want an army for, just display, or you really want to just have something really nice, treat yourself, which is exactly what I did. I sold a bunch of armies around, Christmas time last year. And then I had a lot of money sitting around, and, burns a hole in your pocket. And I believe it was March or April, I sent the army off to him. Now, you might say March or April to whatever time it is now, which is October. Brad, that's an awful long time. You said he's busy. Is he that busy? No, he's not. I said to him that I would be setting up a YouTube channel later this year, and I wanted that army available for filming. I said that there was absolutely no rush, and as commissions came in, just to slot them in around those. I did that because I'm friends with him, and I know he's a busy man, so it didn't bother me. And it showed up beautifully painted when he had time. However, that is because I've worked with him before. We have an old understanding. I would recommend just saying, hey, Andy, what is the time frame in which you can get this army done? And how much would you do it for? Have that communication. Again, if you would like to talk to Andy about it, I highly recommend you do. That is his page, is Volley Fire Painting Services. Message him directly. He'll respond and talk to him about it. He's a great guy. I really enjoy chatting with him. As I said, he's been a long-time friend of the show. So now, that sort of sums up my summary of Andy's painting service. I have a question for you now, you the viewer. This is the very first review that we've ever done on this channel, and I would love your feedback. If you have comments or questions about Andy's services, again, please contact Andy himself. However, if you have comments or questions about this page, the Cast Dice page, please post it below. I would love any feedback you have about how to make this video better, the content that you would like me to cover, different things you'd like me to review. I am probably going to be doing an editorial page at some, video at some point or another, because I'm prone to have an opinion every once in a while. Now, if you would like to hear something like that on a particular topic, or as I said, anything you'd like for me to review in general, just let me know. I'm always keen to hear, just like I am on the Facebook page. Now, if you would like to send a more detailed message, one that doesn't fit in the little comment box below, you can go to Facebook. That is CASTDICE, just like it is in the corner. Go to that page and message it. I am literally the only one that answers that. My name is Brad. I'd love to hear from you. I do think it's funny that my co-host on this video and every podcast I ever do is my little dog Jim. And as you can see in the background, as I've been recording, there is just no keeping him away from the back of the camera and the limelight. So please excuse. Other than that, guys, this is a new page. I am trying to build it up and get a little bit of the word out there that this page exists, that I will be doing a wide span of videos. If you wouldn't mind, you know, I don't have a Patreon. I don't ask for money. This is a hobby of mine, and it is a little early days, and it is a little rough. But just like the podcast, the quality will improve over time. I would ask, if you have the time, if you've enjoyed both the battle reports or the product reviews, or you just like to see more of what I am going to be videoing about, hit subscribe, please. That would really mean the world to me. I guess, just as our old buddy Casey says, when you are playing the games that we are talking about on the show, or showing, or anything else, I hope your beverages are cold. I hope your dice roll hot. But more than anything else, we at Cast Dice hope that you, yes you, are having fun. Thank you for watching.